All right, well, welcome everyone. I'm Steve Snell. I'm head of research at Rep Data. I know a lot of you. I do this a lot. So I'm joined today by Kurt Knapton, who's a member of the Rep Data board. I have a bio, so I don't mess this up. But Kurt is a pioneer in online data collection in the market research sample space. Kurt's a former CEO of eRewards. Who remembers eRewards? Hell yeah. All right. eRewards and Research Now. He helped move the industry from telephone interviewing. Who worked in a telephone in a call room? There we go. Heck yeah. Moved the from telephone to web-based data collection. An early innovator of permission-based online panels who successfully commercialized them to a global scale. Kurt consistently advocated that respondent quality was essential for trusted data decision-making. As a Rep Data board member, Kurt continues to champion the most effective data quality methodologies. So thank you, Kurt, for being on our board, and thank you for joining us today. Kurt, first questions first. And I've heard a couple people in the room have come up and said to Kurt, "Where you been, man?" So I'm going to turn to Kurt and say, "Where you been, man?"
Well, Steve, thanks for being here. I like this fireside chat format. Thanks, everyone, for being here. It has been a little while. We grew the company to eRewards and through the Research Now to over $315 million in annual revenue, and now adding SSI, and now it's called Dynata, but it's more than double that. So it was a great ride, growing from kind of startup executive leadership team to something that it really did make an impact on the transition from phone to online research in a very formative time. My story, the reason I stepped down was a personal one. My father was diagnosed with ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease, and took a couple years to be a caregiver for my father. We were very close, and never have regretted that decision at all. And when that journey was done, I looked at my career and said, what do I want to do next? And what I found the most rewarding was mentoring leaders and entrepreneurs and those that would come after and become an advisor and an investor. So that's what I've done, both in the industry, but mostly outside the industry in technology companies. So Pat Stokes, the CEO of Rep Data and founder, his first job was coming to work at eRewards, and we sat in the same room for almost a year because we were tight on space. And so it was just a cool experience to see people coming up, and there's so many what I call eRewards Research Now mafia out there doing cool stuff in the industry. And so that's what I've continued to do. Now I'm on the board at Rep Data, and I'm very excited about what they're putting together. Kind of during this time of what seems to be a recurring theme of change, technological change in the industry.
Thanks, Kurt. It's rare that the CEO shares an office with a new employee, so you must have been very tight on space.
We were tight on space. We had formed a new role called a sales support person. They were there to help the salespeople, the real salespeople, get quotes out every day. And Pat came in, and another guy named Jimmy Routson, and they could listen to all my conversations for like 9 months. And it's so rewarding to see what they've both done in their careers. And I think that's what I take the most away from my memories, are just the people that I've interacted with, client relationships. I see a lot of familiar faces in here today, so that's what's really most important.
Awesome. Kurt, just to set the stage a bit, I thought you could kind of tell us how we got here. So obviously eRewards is, sort of synonymous with early days of online research. There's a lot of people in the room, kind of myself included, that I'm sort of online research native. I started using survey software in college, and here we are. So can you give us a little bit of an overview of how we got to this place from where you started and sort of the challenges?
Sure. So when I kind of came on the scene, the state of the art, this was year 2000. People would still get called in the middle of dinner on the phone, interrupting you, knowing nothing about you, trying to get you to answer survey questions and offering nothing in return except bothering you. So when the internet was starting to come of age and people started having email addresses, the first premise of eRewards is cut through the clutter, be permission-based on email. But then we found this kind of what we thought was a niche at the time of surveys. What if we could give someone an opportunity to take a survey anytime they wanted? We could get permission from them, build a profile so everything was very relevant to them, and then reward them for their time with a fair value exchange and build what we'd call an relationship or build a relationship online. And it worked. People started in very high response rates answering, and we found that we had a gold mine in both B2B and then eventually B2C research. So we kind of became a pioneer. We saw Greenfield Online kind of paving the way, and we just kind of snuck in there and started scaling after that. So it was just a better value proposition for people than where the current phone research was at the time.
So I did want to talk about, part of our discussion today is that Kurt has written an ebook. You can actually scan the QR code and get it. It's digestible as an ebook ought to be. But one of the big themes in there is that what it means to have quality data. The quality question has evolved a lot. So just setting the table still, what did quality mean in eRewards early online sample?
Yeah, I think we differentiated ourselves on quality. We tried to say the gold standard was what we called by invitation only. So what we did is, back then, quality meant how you recruited people. I would say the 3 R's, how you recruited people. Was it representative of the population? And what were your response rates? If you had healthy response rates and you had a good representative group of people, and you recruited them in a high quality way, you knew who they were, you had something real, and you could kind of trust them after that. In other words, you could send them multiple surveys and they would be trustworthy from then on. So we didn't really have a fraud problem. We recruited a lot from airlines and hotels and rental cars and customer databases. So you had to have an ID to get on an airplane. You had to, show an ID to get in a hotel. And so we knew these were real people, and that's where we started. And so over time, through aggregation and exchanges and marketplaces, there was good reasons for that. People didn't want to just deal with every single panel company out there, so aggregators were kind of the next wave of evolution. But there was something lost, I think, along the way sometimes between the sample sources, the traffic sources, and the vetting and the accountability to how all the origination of the respondents. So we were very focused on that, and I think today it's still very important.
Yeah, and it seems, one of the things that you sort of said early on was that if you got a phone call in the middle of dinner, I always take those phone calls, right? Because I believe in survey karma, and maybe other people do. Like, I take all the surveys, but you didn't get a reward, and eRewards is right there in the name, right? So we also have people taking surveys for money, and with money comes fraud, almost always. And at the same time that there is an evolution on the research side, there's an evolution on the respondent side, that they have access to technology. And it's easier than ever to lie about who you are, where you are, sort of defraud the good people at the Quirks conference. So, it's both sides. Maybe the researcher is one layer further removed because they're aggregating in a way that helps them get a lot of respondents. But the respondents now are also a little bit different. So one of the things you talk about in the book is respondent quality now requires sort of a wide aperture. You're looking at a lot of different layers. Can you talk about what that means?
Yeah, so the problem back in, let's say, 20 years ago, 2005, was can we get enough respondents? Can we find enough respondents? And then the solution to that was aggregation so that we could have broader access to more people, but then that turned into a quality problem. And so the solution was to layer more technology on top to identify and filter out fraudulent behavior, because incentives are involved, so then it will attract people that want to cheat or lie about whether they're qualified or not, speed through a survey, bots or click farms or all kinds of stuff can infiltrate. We used a by invitation only approach where people that wanted to be on the panel couldn't be because we controlled whether they were invited or not. But the more open recruitment and the panels were built in more of an open way, bad actors would filter in. And so today, the modern way is aggregators add value by layering in fraudulent fraud prevention layers. And so you can't some just do a little bit, but my proposition is you have to vet the sources, you have to track the sourcing of all the panels and traffic that you aggregate, and you need a pre-survey, in-survey, and post-survey set of layers and signals that can catch any bad actors along the way. And you can really evaluate a sample source by how much you catch in those kind of 3 layers after the sourcing, and then start eliminating some of the sources that are not cutting the mustard or raising to the right level of quality. And that's what I think the modern researcher needs, is that high sophistication in the fraud detection throughout the layers of the survey process.
I've heard it said by different researchers, like, well, we don't worry about cleaning the data because we have fraud detection. There's also people, when I ask them, what do you do for fraud detection? They say they clean the data, right? But what you're really advocating for, and really what Rep Data advocates for, is you got to do both. I mean, you can't do fraud detection and not clean. You can't clean and hope to find fraud, because the fraud looks really damn good.
Well, especially as we enter the AI age, we can have non-humans taking a survey that look really good. In fact, they can even look better than humans, because humans are fickle, they're flawed, they're responding out of emotion, not just complete rationality. And so you want some imperfection. You want what someone's feeling, and not just the AI interpretation of that. So I think today we have more challenges from data fraud with the advent of AI, agentic AI, where people can look very good at the outset, and I think it's one of the biggest threats to data quality right now that the industry is facing.
Just to linger on AI for a minute, what about AI do you find most promising is going to help sort of the data quality battle? Is there anything that has you especially excited, or do you think of AI primarily as a threat to data quality? What's good?
Well, I think change begets opportunity, and we're in a situation where there's a lot of change happening. And if you look back, the story of online sample is a story of change about every 5 years. Phone to online desktop, and then to mobile untethered, where people had multiple screens, and then we're moving from panels to marketplaces, exchanges, and now we're facing AI. So I think the promises are we can write surveys much faster with better design with AI help. We can program surveys much faster and more thoroughly than we could when it was just a human programmer. Open ends can be coded in much deeper clarity and faster than ever before. we can analyze and synthesize research data much quicker, and it can even write reports for you out of the box. And the fraud detection, if the respondent is getting more sophisticated, AI is very sophisticated at sniffing out the tells of AI. So I think those are all the positives, that you can do better, faster, cheaper with AI help than you could just the manual efforts that teams, struggled with in the past. So that's the positive side.
You can do the bad side. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, I think we all know the threats, right? Anything that's an opportunity can also be a threat. So the history is we have to adapt as an industry, and we've done that along the way. The problem is we tend to adapt kind of more slowly than the threat is replicating. And so I think if right now, my understanding is it's about 1% of all the respondents out there is an agentic, robot, cloaking as a human. But I think that's going to go pretty steep, and you have to have tools. So it may not be the biggest problem now, but it's, I think, something that's going to be on the rise. So the sooner we can respond and adapt, the better, and kind of prevent it from becoming, a more of an epidemic or pandemic, sifting in and causing us to doubt the veracity of the respondent.
Yeah, I've done some of the research. We've seen other research, and that kind of tracks, less than 1%. I'm a recovering academic. I don't spend a lot of time reading academic papers still, but, there was one that made the rounds last fall. The potential existential threat to surveys is agents. People taking surveys, not as people, but people, I guess, deploying agents to take surveys at scale. And is it time to sound the alarm, even if it's 1%? What should we do about that?
Well, today, the biggest threat, I think, are people saying they're someone and they're not, just to qualify for a survey. And then the next one after that is kind of inattentiveness. People aren't paying attention, and they get filtered out because they're just not putting their best efforts out there. So this isn't the biggest problem now, but I think you can make a case for synthetic data of cloning someone, and it's not a crazy idea to say, if I know myself, I can teach a model to be exactly like me, and I can have my agent go answer these surveys. And there are certain types of polling and surveys that may work perfectly well. But experiential type things, like let's say I'm asked to survey about an in-home usage test or a movie that I saw. If I haven't seen The Odyssey, okay, I can't really tell you if I liked it or I didn't. I could tell my agent that I like history and I like movies, but until I actually experience and feel that movie, I'm not going to be able to give you an authentic response. So I think we can use synthetic data or an AI agent representative of a person or a twin or a clone, but only to a certain point for certain types of research. Otherwise, I think it works against us.
I guess kind of a summary question then is, there are a lot of challenges to online data collection. We move from, do we have enough respondents, to, are the people trustworthy, are they real? So I guess the question really is, in summary, can we trust panels? Can we trust panelists at this point?
As much as the technology has changed, we still have the same fundamental question: are the respondents trustworthy? If we're going to be making really big decisions based on the data, can it be trusted? And if we say no, it's probably better to have no research than untrustworthy data to base decisions on. So we've got to make decisions. We want to be fact-based. So we've got to push to that next layer of of figuring it out. And I think the multi-layered approach is important, and the testing is important. And I think ultimately it comes down to, we need qualified respondents that are attentive, right? That's what quality is. Qualified respondents who are attentive, and they're who they say they are, and they're
Where they say they are.
where they say they are, and maybe Steve, you can say a few things, but from a technological perspective, we can digital footprint, we can device identify, we can, when it comes to people that might be taking a survey, a real human, but they want to augment it with AI, we can even find these days a copy paste, right? We can detect if someone copied something externally and stuck it in an open end, right?
Totally, yeah. I mean, whenever we're trying to really figure out, is this a quality respondent? You said attentive and qualified. And the way I think about that is a qualified respondent is who they are supposed to be, where they're supposed to be. They're qualified to be in the survey. They have the domain expertise if that's required. They bought the thing. They know the stuff, right? But attentive is, I bet in e-rewards you still had inattentive respondents, right? So an attentive respondent is paying attention, and they're giving thoughtful responses. And even though, there's nothing about the passage of time that should inherently affect attention, I would wager that we probably have more inattention now too, this completely separate from fraud. And it's because people are busy.
And that's why you have to have something, one thing that Research Now didn't have, but what Rep Data has is the ability to do in-survey. So using AI as someone is taking the survey, they can respond to what's actually happening, the inattentiveness, on the spot, and the data cleaning on the spot. And also with the second shield, there's an ability to spot an anomaly in a source and not just spot it and go, oh, we have a problem, but it's almost like stop the leak, shut the spigot off to that one source because they're the problem child.
Yeah.
And so the real-time aspects of doing it is something I wish we used to have.
Yeah.
And now it's something you can use AI to do in the moment. And that solves a lot of problems because you don't want to reward someone for getting done with the survey experience if they really were a problem.
Yeah, you've talked about multiple signals in the ebook and here, and these are some of the signals. Copy paste is a signal. It's not necessarily a, definitive signal. The academics especially get excited about, like, maybe we should allow copy paste because people are using it to form their thoughts. Okay, but now we're looking at copy paste, we're looking at typing speed, we're looking at mouse movement, and we're looking at a whole bunch of markers of the device, the browser. Are people using an emulator or a web driver? Are they using some funky stuff to take a survey? And at some point, it's like, well, is that fraud or inattention? It doesn't matter. It's a low quality respondent. And if at the end of the day, what we care about is trust, we really want to remove all of those people.
Yeah, we want to watch out for that. And then the worst offenders we put on a do not fly list and they never get the opportunity to do it again. And a good thing about aggregating, it does look across panels. So if you've got somebody that's on multiple panels, we didn't have that before. That's a value added that the aggregators and the pre-checks can spot someone in the duplication aspect. So in many ways, we've got better tools. I think we're holding our own on the quality, but if you're skimping on this, you're, especially with the amount of problems that are out there, if you're skimping on it, you really do have to question, am I spending enough? You want to look at value, not cost. And if someone's bringing the real value in the detection of this fraud, then you're really getting your money's worth.
So I want to leave time for a question or two from the audience. But so last question is, 20 plus years observing this space and going from sort of the insurgent solution of online sample to now being the MO for how most of market research happens. What's the single biggest lesson you would take away from 20, 25 years of observing this space?
I would take away that technological change is a constant. We're going to see that come up. You've got to be proactive at putting tools in place to make sure you can be confident in the data and work with companies that have that in place and ask really good questions. I think clients should always ask, where is the data coming from? How is it sourced? Show me the percentage breakdowns of where it came from. Show me how many people you are filtering out by each problem you found. Expect good answers and expect who you work with to share that and be transparent with you. That's the way you're going to get clear data. I wouldn't just say, oh, they're making sausage and it tastes good, I'm going to trust it. I wouldn't do that. I would want to know step by step what's their recipe and what's their process. And if you work with companies like that will always tell you the truth and be focused on quality, I think you will always, no matter how much technological change, you'll always be confident that you're making good decisions, or at least the best decisions possible with the data available.
It just made me think, in this summer of Taylor Farms, we've all become very obsessed with sourcing and understanding where things come from. So I think that's great advice. Transparency is key, and really just understanding what quality checks and what signals are there. We're reliant on multiple signals. Data quality is about so many things now. Show us what they are. Do you have any questions for Kurt? Please. I guess you can have mine. No,
It's kind of loud over there. We're kind of...
Okay, so I'm curious to think about this from the consumer's perspective. Have you noticed they're less willing to take surveys or participate in panels because of AI? Because they don't know, is this a real link? Is this some sort of AI fraudulent spam, etc.?
Have you thought about that?
Yeah, response rates. I wrote a paper back in, I can't remember when it was now, like 2005 in Quirks, that looked at the linkages of response rates and quality data, because if you have non-respondents, you can have non-respondent bias, and so you do have to have a healthy response rate in that. Maybe you want to comment on what you're seeing in terms of, is AI stymied responsiveness?
Well, my mind went to kind of a funny place with that, which is, I think the social contract we have with respondents historically has been, we're going to pay you a little bit of money for a little bit of time, right? And I wouldn't say it's a problem of AI necessarily, but I think that the AI moderated online qual is theoretically quite cool. But a lot of times we're going to panelists who've been recruited to take a survey, and we say, turn on your video, turn on your camera, your microphone, look at me and talk to me for half an hour. And I think it does turn off some people. And it's not necessarily like an agent made me do it, in that sort of AI way. But I do think that there is sort of a disconnect now as methods evolve, that some of the panels are not well equipped to do that. It's almost like a break in the social contract that we have with respondents. A lot of people take surveys, I'm sure, at their kids' soccer games, right? Who's got kids in soccer? There's a lot of time to kill, right? And it's easy to take a couple surveys. But if now the survey's like, turn on your camera and look into it, and people take surveys on the bus, so I do think actually that's an area where AI being leveraged for good is causing a challenge in this space.
And I know we're running close to time here, but one thing that's important too is look at someone who can provide an end-to-end solution that can connect the dots, because respondents don't want to be over-surveyed. They also don't want to be under-surveyed, because if they're only getting one survey every blue moon, they almost go, whoa, what's the point of participating in this panel? And so balancing that appropriately is important for the respondent experience, and also the aggregation across all these different panels is important, so that you don't have to, you have one desk, you have one platform that you use, and it can all be taken care of it. When you're working with different companies, that data gets spread out and you really can't evaluate everything that you need to.
One last question.
Long ago and far away, I was part of the panel business. And increasingly now I'm hearing from a lot of startups who really are tech savvy but not research savvy, that their differentiator is, oh, we have our own panel, or worse, we're building a panel. What do you say to some of these folks who claim that they're going to have a panel and really don't understand the complexity and, possibly the misinterpretation of what building a panel really means?
Yeah, I can say that I learned under the founder of eWords, a guy named Hal Brierly, who is a loyalty program expert. So he helped design American Advantage in the U.S., Hertz #1 Gold, Delta Sky Miles. So there are so many nuances to building an relationship that retains people over time. And some of that knowledge, if you don't apply it appropriately, people will participate for a little while and then they'll fall off. And so it can be a very expensive lesson to learn, to say, I'm going to build a panel, I'm going to build a relationship with a lot of people, and if you don't do all the right things, they're going to attrite, and you're not going to have any responsiveness left. And so I would say
Can
it's
I give you some
it's a
names
challenge.
of some people that maybe you need to give that message to?
Sure, talk to me after.
Everyone, thank you for joining us, and thank you, Kurt, for sharing. We are
Thank
next
you all.
door. We'll be at the booth just outside. So we were counting on a hotter, sweatier Quirk, so we have sunglasses and Diet Cokes if you'd like to join us. So thank you for coming.
Thank you all.